Good morning, everyone. Good morning today to this morning coffee for the soul. We will be every morning on Sundays at 8:30 a.m. coming up here to Kardec Radio, and we will be talking about a different topic on every Sunday, as we have been doing for a few months. Today's topic is about labeling people. Today's topic is about putting a name and many times a nickname, or just picking a quality or a aspect of a person and nominating that person that. Well, this is an interesting issue because it happens all the time. This is closely tied as well to spiritual. It has a spiritual connotation on how you're going to progress and how you're going to walk in your life. And it all depends, in this case, in the subject that we're talking about, first of all, how do you label yourself? If I ask you, who are you? What are you going to say? If I ask you, who are you? Well, let's say that your name is Andrea. Most of the time, people will answer, well, I'm Andrea. I work at such and such place. I live in New York, and I'm the daughter of blah, 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 blah. Well, the problem is I didn't ask you where you lived. I didn't ask you where you worked. I didn't ask you your name, or I didn't ask you who your parents were. I asked you who you were. So that's a touchy subject. When we ask someone who they are, it goes, if you're a spiritist, it's not about labels. It's not about where you work, who your parents are, what social position you occupy. It's really about who you are. So again, if I ask you, who are you? As a spiritist, what are you going to say? Well, most people who study the doctrine will say, I'm a spirit in progression. I am a simple spirit who is in a progress state. That's really who we are. So the problem is, when it comes to labels, when you as a child get someone who labels you, whatever it is, it may be a quality, and this might end up being a good label, or it could be anything that you could be seen as. Let's use, for example, a kid who's a little chubby, right? A kid who's a little overweight. And people start calling him chubs or chubby or fatty. Well, it's interesting because he could actually grow and lose all his weight, but his nickname will stick. If someone is smart and they start calling them, hey, Miss Smarty Pants, hey, oh, this is Smarty Pants, oh, this is my nuclear physicist friend, or this is whatever it is. Well, that person will most likely, maybe they just got an A on the paper. And for that, they are known now for the smart one. And they may have to live their whole life with an incredible pressure to keep up with that A, because now he's labeled as the smart one. And many times he may not be as smart or as intellectual, let's say, as other people are. So that creates a problem. It puts a lot of pressure on them. So when we label people, we are picking one small, tiny aspect of their personality, and we're already telling that person who they are. Now, why is this important? Because, again, this leads to stereotypes, of course. This leads to believing that a person who's smart, we nominate someone as a geek, and we nominate someone as stupid. And those are names or nicknames that we qualify people with. And sometimes we take the person then now as that person, period. And that's all they are. Kardec was never too attached to how you call it, as long as you knew what it was and you did the work. A lot of times as spiritists, we get so attached to the exact word. God forbid someone says karma. People almost attack those who will say the word karma. Of course, karma is not a spiritist word. It's not in a doctrine. It's not in any of the codification books. But so there are many words that came afterwards. correct? There are many things that we classify. There is no such thing as fluidified water. There's a lot of things that are not in the codification book, yet we call it because we need to call it something. Now, the problem is, again, Kardec, if you read his amazing writings, what the spirits are more concerned about is with the essence of things. So sometimes we'll talk about karma. And of course, karma has to be, I give and I receive to the same intensity. So of course, there is no such thing really as karma, but there is cause and effect. And not really, the effect is not going to be to the same extent as the cause, because again, Jesus has already said, love covers a multitude of sin. So the effect of things that you have done, if you have done evil, let's put it in that, does not necessarily have to come back to you as an evil consequence. If you work in love after you have done the evil, the consequence can be lessened. So again, it's not karma. It's not an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But again, if we use that word, some people get ostracized as not a spiritist. And again, spiritist itself. It's interesting because people get so tied to, I stopped calling myself, I see people saying, I stopped calling myself a spiritist because of the movement. It's going in different directions and this and that. And everybody has their own view. But what we have to really look into these labels is to really look at ourselves and say, what does it mean to me? Who am I? What am I going to label myself? What am I? If I'm a daughter of God, right? And the way I look at it is, I don't own the universe, but my Father does. Thus, I also inherit the universe someday. So it's amazing when we say, I'm the daughter of God. To me, there's no better labels than that. And when I say that, it means that He has created me, and I am going to achieve all the goodness eventually in my life, and I'm going to be with Him someday. So all the other temporary labels does not matter. Problem is, we always blame the behavior of the person, and we forget the person, who they are. It's very easy to say he's a murderer, or and the person will take that as this person is a murderer. Of course, it's out there. But if you say that person committed a murder, you see the difference? When you say that person, that doesn't mean, yes, of course, he's a murderer for the simple fact that they killed someone. But look at the connotation and look at the way of saying how it differs. He is lazy, or he woke up and did nothing all day. It doesn't give the person all the weight of just being that. That person might be a murderer, but he also might be a great father. He might also be completely in doubt when it comes to God. He might also be a great writer. He might, you see, now when you take the person, and I'm talking about one of the worst things one can do, to murder someone. So that person, you stop loving even people because you take one connotation associated with that person. May it be the worst one, but you only see that. And that creates a problem because we forget that we're all the same and we all go through different things. So it's okay to criticize, to condemn behaviors, but not people. And when we label people, we do just that. We tell that person that that's who they are. In Spiritism, when we say that you're not truly a Spiritist, you're dogmatic, these days, sometimes we say anybody who does not agree with us, we say that they have parallel movements. They're starting something that's not Spiritism. Well, let's see what really Spiritism is. What did Kardec say that a true Spiritist is, right? It's someone who's really trying their best. They're working on their moral conditions. They're trying to do the best they can with all the knowledge they're getting, with all the heart that they're putting out there towards the charity work, towards the world. But really, it's someone who's who knows their inclinations, to evil, but they're working on them. So that's where a Spiritist is. It does not, at no point Kardec said a Spiritist is someone who reads 8 books a month, someone who has this infinite amount of knowledge of all the questions and answers of the Spirit's book, or someone who does. He simply says, and look exactly what it says when the question is asked, "What is a spiritist?" And again, when that question is asked, it's someone who simply tries the best to go against their evil inclinations, their bad inclinations, things that tempt them, and they try the best to walk the narrow path. So we have to pay attention to the labels we give people, to the labels we give even spiritists. Many people are giving up on being even spiritists because, again, they're saying, well, I'm not really a spiritist because I don't do this or I don't participate in that. But you can be an amazing spiritist, and don't allow people to label you and for you to believe that, and that defines who you are. Another thing is titles. We have to pay attention to our titles. What are you? Again, who are you and what are you? I may hold a doctorate degree and master's degree, or I remember when I used to introduce lecturers at my center, and sometimes when I began, I used to give all this bio and I used to pump them up and I used to say all these things that they were. Oh, this person is a doctor of this and they've studied this and and then I realized that for what? What does being a mechanical engineer has to do with the lecture about the gospel that they are going to give? You see, I was working their ego, and I was working something that at some time it could even be belittling or making others feel less. I'm not saying that the person should not be proud of their titles in the good way, and they should take advantage of their titles. Of course they should. But does it really have anything to do with the topic that we're going to talk about? Of course, if you're talking about a topic that has to do with medicine and you have a doctor of medicine given that, it's good for people to know that this person has a specific study on the topic. But sometimes we take so much of the titles and we somehow think people are better or worse because of their titles. And we have to pay attention, because when we introduce someone, how will we introduce people? It's interesting. We walk all day and we want to say that we walk with God, right? God is with us. Yet we rarely introduce him to others. How many times we say that we are spiritists, and we somehow in the conversation we bring that up. Many people will say, I don't want to do religion and sports and politics. Those things we don't talk about. Well, if you are not going to talk about spiritism, if you're not going to bring God to others and the knowledge of this amazing doctrine, that is the biggest disservice you're doing to spiritism. Emmanuel has told us the biggest thing you can do for spiritism is to talk about it, is to give people this knowledge. How amazing if you knew this before now, if you knew all these things that we learn here, if you knew it, I don't know, at a time that you were really in trouble and you had no knowledge of it. So the title that I mostly care is to be a spiritist. Of course, it's to be a Christian before anything. We are all Christians. But when we say we're spiritist, and some people are even afraid of saying that, they're saying, oh, I can't mention that. Well, are you going to own it? Are you going to be a proud, amazing, happy spiritist and say, wow, I'm bringing this to people? Or are you going to coward and just take it back and be afraid of the consequences of bringing this topic up? We're not here to argue. We're here to present this amazing title. So some titles is important because some titles will entice others to seek out what it's all about. And some people might say, what is a spiritist? I usually say, well, I'll give you a book, and then after you read the book, we'll talk about it. Or, you know what, go to this website, and it's not fair for me to tell you in 5 minutes all about what I believe, what I know to be. So it avoids some kind of arguments. Or I can say the very, very basic. And if the person says, I don't buy it, that's okay. But you incited a little curiosity on it. So titles, what's a title if you really don't know what it means? Or if you really have a title, do you really care? If you really know that thing, whatever it is that you're mastered in, is it really important to you when you really know that others know that you know? Or it's just important to know, period? So again, some people are getting too attached to titles, and we have to pay attention, not just in Spiritism, but being attached to titles in general is a dangerous thing, because you start, and this is on a subconscious level. It's the conscious. I'm talking to you here. The subconscious, in 15 seconds, it goes to my long-term memory, even less than that. So, but when we bring our subconscious, we bring it literally. So when, as a child, someone says that I'm dumb, and I may forget that, but when I remember down the road, I really believe that I am stupid. I am dumb, because that comes back literally. I am stupid, not because I did a dumb thing. Again, if I'm going to attach myself so much to titles, I have to pay attention, especially as a Spiritist, because we know that we are not all those things. We are just, for a brief moment of time, being that thing. And pay attention to not care so much to positions. This is the president of this. This is the vice president. This is this. Titles, they're very dangerous. I know in my center, we have no titles. Nobody gets a title. Nobody gets a label. And why that is? Because we know that sometimes you start forming little subgroups within a group. And the subgroups go a lot of times because of titles. We know this in the study of psychology. Once you give someone a title of coordinator, it begins to differentiate from their own peers. So once you say, this is just a moderator, someone who will look at the time of the class, who will look, people see that person differently as a team member instead of the boss. So it's very good for us to kind of do away with titles. And we look at Jesus. My goodness, I'm looking at the time, I'm looking at Jesus. He is really a doctor of everything. Everything. He is a doctor. He has knowledge of everything, of physics, of math, of psychology, of medicine. He is the doctor of doctors as far as doctor degrees go. And the only time that someone someone asked him, are you the king? What does he say? My kingdom is not of this world. When someone asks him, or someone comes to him and says, you are good, Jesus, what does he say? Only my Father is good. Now think about it. For someone so humble, someone that is the only person here on earth that we can truly call good, and he even says, I am not good, only my Father is good. And when we see him truly as the King of peace, the King of hearts, our King, our Lord, he says, my kingdom is not of this world. So why are we attaching ourselves so much to title? Again, let's pay attention. Let's bring back to our roots. Let's see ourselves as just brothers and sisters. Let's try to, be happy with the title you have. I'm not saying that. It's great if you're a doctor, if you got your bachelor's degree and whatever it is. If you're an artist, it's great to do those things. But be careful not to just label yourself as that title, because you're so much more than that. It doesn't matter what people have told you were as a child, and if you grew up with that nickname, you can let go of that nickname. That does not define who you are. That's at some point you had a behavior that led someone to believe that that's who you are. And that doesn't mean you are that, because we behave in so many different manners, and that does not define us. It's great that we can make mistakes, we can do amazing things, and we're going to be remembered by our behaviors. And maybe that person only saw you at the time you were behaving that specific way, and you got the label because of that. So again, let's, as brothers and sisters, really label ourselves as, I'm a Spiritist. Why do I like that label? Because that means I am a person full of flaws, who's trying to walk the right path, who's trying to win over my bad inclinations. And that could be really anyone who decides to take an action and change their lives. And again, I'm just a child of God. And that's amazing, because you know what? So is everyone else. People, thank you so much. Rita's here, Fred, Teresa, Fatima's here, Georgia's here. Thank you so much for coming here so early in a Sunday. It's very windy, by the way. I don't know where you guys are at, but very, very, very windy night. I wish you such an amazing Sunday, a great week. If you want to leave any kind of topics that we can talk about next week, usually, we talk about for about 20 minutes or so. Please leave any links related to this, any questions, it could be interactive. Anybody who wants to even come in on camera, let me know. And if you have a question, I can bring you up on camera. Just hit a button here and you can be with me. So thank you, Rita, saying thank you. Very beautiful topic. Thank you very much, Rita. And I guess that is our time, friends. And I will see you next Sunday. Have a blessed one. Thank you very much. And don't forget, always watch Kardec Radio. We have some amazing shows. Thank you so much.